I want to say two things at the beginning. The first is just for the record and for those people watching on television, the Economic Club of Chicago and Bloomberg both invited Vice President Harris to a similar interview about her economic plans that she has declined so far. And second, just to set some parameters about this interview, which I was just discussing with President Trump, we're going to focus on business and the economy. And that's partly because this is a business audience, but it's also because voters insist that the economy is the main issue that matters when they vote. So, on that note, let me invite onto the stage President Trump. Have a seat. President Trump, thank you for doing this, as we said, and you heard the reception there. The business people of Chicago, like everywhere else, they like a lot of the things you want to do in terms of tax cuts and some of the spending proposals, but like many business people, what they're often worried about is the cost. Mm-hmm. And the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, which is a bipartisan outfit, put out some predictions the other day. If you add up all the promises you've made, and your plans would add $7.5 trillion to the debt. Mm-hmm. That's more than twice the total for Vice President Harris. You're on course to push up debt up to 150% of GDP. You know, this is a very business-like audience. Yeah. Why should they trust you with that?
Because we're about growth. She's got no growth whatsoever, and we're all about growth. We're going to bring companies back to our country. You look at even today, as I was driving over, I see these empty, old, beautiful, like steel mills and factories that are empty and falling down. Some have been converted to senior citizens' homes, but that's not going to do the trick. And we're going to bring the companies back. We're going to lower taxes still further for companies that are going to make their product in the USA. We're going to protect those companies with strong tariffs, because I'm a believer in tariffs. I'm not sure that you are. I don't think you are, but I congratulate you on your career. But to me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff, and it's my favorite word. It needs a public relations firm to help it, but to me, it's the most beautiful word in the dictionary.
Tariffs, do you think that will bring in the revenues? To use another bipartisan group, Peterson Institute, they say they only bring in $200 billion. That is that's barely the cost of two of your promises.
Yeah, but that's like for what company are you talking about, okay? Look, I've brought in with tariffs, and I was just getting started. Then COVID came, but tariffs are two things, if you look at it. Number one is for protection of the companies that we have here and the new companies that will move in, because we're going to have thousands of companies coming into this country. We're going to grow it like it's never grown before, and we're going to protect them when they come in, because we're not going to have somebody undercut them. If I don't win, those factories are going to wipe out this country. They're the biggest factories ever built for cars. They're going to wipe out our country. If she wins, and she doesn't know what the hell she's doing. If she wins, she's not going to be thinking about. I couldn't. Every speech I made having to do with cars, but every speech I made having to do with tariffs, I'd mentioned that our country is being threatened by Mexico. Now, all of those things, beyond even the car companies, all of those things are now dead. They're dead. I asked him, will they start? Probably not. They're dead as a doornail. If she gets in, it'll start up again.
President Trump, I'll let you give your example. No, you talked a lot about tariffs. You look at the American economy, 40 million jobs rely on trade. It accounts for 27% of GDP.
Okay.
If you cut that off, that's also going to have an effect on many, many business people here. Yeah. Tariffs also have another side. Isn't that something that you have to acknowledge? No. You could be plunging America into the biggest trade war since Smoot-Hawley.
But there are no tariffs.
You're going to stop. There are tariffs already at the moment.
There are no tariffs. All you have to do is build your plant in the United States, and you don't have any tariffs.
But people, in a lot of places like this, there are a lot of jobs that rely on foreigners coming here. You're going to basically stop trade with China. You're talking about 60% on that, 60% tariffs on that. You're talking, as you said, 100, 200% on things you don't really like. You're also talking about 10, 20% tariffs on the rest of the world. That is going to have a serious effect on the overall economy. And yes, you're going to find some people who will gain from individual tariffs. The overall effect could be massive in terms of the economy.
I agree it's going to have a massive effect, positive effect. It's going to be a positive, not a negative.
Well,
let me just let me tell you. I know how committed you are to this, and it must be hard for you to spend 25 years talking about tariffs as being negative, and then have somebody explain to you that you're totally wrong.
President Trump, 40 million jobs is a lot of jobs to rely on trade.
They're all coming back.
Those are 40 million jobs. Those are 40 million jobs in America that rely on trade.
Are you ready? John Deere, great company. They announced about a year ago they're going to build big plants outside of the United States, right? They're going to build them in Mexico.
And you threatened them with tariffs and they stopped.
That's right. I said, if John Deere builds those plants and not selling anything into the United States, they just announced yesterday they're probably not going to build the plants, okay? I kept the jobs here, and I'll keep them. John Deere will stay here.
What about consumers? People out there?
They're going to be the biggest beneficiaries.
Yeah, critics say your tariffs will end up being like a national sales tax.
Nope.
Because if you have America at the moment has $3 trillion worth of imports, you're going to add tariffs to every single one of them. That is going to push up the cost for all those people who want to buy foreign goods.
Now, what's going to happen?
That is just simple mathematics, President Trump.
It's not. Yeah, it is, but not the way you figured. I was always very good at mathematics. Yes. Let me tell you, you're saying $3 trillion.
That's $3 trillion worth of imports.
And they don't have to pay. And the higher the tariff, the more likely it is to have them come into the country.
The higher the tariff, the more you're going to put on the value of that piece, those goods, the higher people are going to have to pay in shops.
Ready? The higher the tariff, the more likely it is that the company will come into the United States and build a factory in the United States so it doesn't have to pay the tariff.
That will take many, as you know, that will take many years.
In fact, I'll tell you, there's another theory is that the tariff, you make it so high, so horrible, so obnoxious that they'll come right away. So there's two ways of looking at a tariff. You can do it as a money-making instrument, or you can do it as something to get the companies. Let me tell you the other thing about tariffs that's great. Our steel companies, as you know, 3-4 years ago, they were all when I was in office, but I had a lot to do with steel. We were going to lose all our steel companies because China, as you remember, was dumping steel at levels that nobody's ever seen before. And I put a 50% tax on that, and tariff on that, all dumped steel. And it was also bad steel. It was what they call dirty steel. It wasn't good steel, which is a bad thing for structural components of buildings and planes and things like that. And I put a 50% tariff. They stopped dumping steel. And I saved our steel mills by having that. We saved it. We saved our steel. Now, what was left, because we've lost so much, but there are certain companies you have to have. There are certain things you have to have. Steel, you have to have. If you go to war, there's a possibility you go to war. I kept us out of war. I was the only president in 82 years that kept you out of a war, except I defeated ISIS, but I inherited that war. There's no wars.
President Trump, with great respect, I was asking about tariffs. You've gone off about that. Seeing you brought up tariffs and foreign policy, many people would say the biggest problem with your tariffs is actually geopolitics. You, in your first term, you got some credit for effectively saying that there was a Cold War against China. That's what America was in. You look at the last Cold War against the Soviet Union, America won it in part because it rallied allies to it. You're talking about slamming allies with 30%, 20% tariffs. Isn't this time you're going to end up trying to rally the West and you're dividing it instead? Isn't that the real problem with tariffs, even beyond all the problems due to the economy, where you keep on bringing up these individual examples, but the overall effect is going to be dramatic?
No, the overall
answer first about foreign policy.
Yeah, I'll do that.
How does it help you take on China, turning all your allies against you?
Tremendously, because China thinks we're a stupid country. A very stupid country. They can't believe that somebody finally got wise to them. Not one president, Bush, Obama, Barack Hussein Obama, have you heard of him? Not one president, think of it, not one president charged China anything. They said, oh, they are a third world nation. They're developing. Well, we're a developing nation, too. Take a look at Detroit. Take a look at our cities. We're a developing nation. We have to develop more than they do. We're way behind them. You take a look at what's happened to our cities. So what I'm saying is
my question was about your allies, not about China. You are going to annoy the people you need to rally behind you.
But our allies have taken advantage of us more so than our enemies. Our allies are the European Union. We have a trade deficit of $300 billion with the European Union. Our allies are Japan. You know, Abe was a very good friend of mine. He was a great guy, great. We have trade deals that were so bad that I said, who are the people that are doing it? They're either very stupid or they're getting paid off, okay? It's one or the other. It's very simple. We have the worst trade deals all over the world.
But let me just come at you on foreign policy.
You wouldn't have a car company.
You have said that Taiwan should pay for US protection.
Yeah.
I ask because this morning you just mentioned North Korea. The Chinese army, literally as we speak, are engaged in rehearsals for a full naval blockade of Taiwan. So I suppose my question to you, if China invades Taiwan, would you send American troops to defend it?
Well, the reason they're doing it now is they're not going to do it afterwards, okay? So it's, you know, so they're doing it now. They want to do it China now. Look, I had a very good relationship with President Xi, and a very good relationship with Putin, and a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un, who has a nuclear force that you won't even believe. And by the way, today it was announced for those that he just blew up the railroad going into South Korea. That means South Korea is now cut off from Russia and China and various other places. Cut off by rail.
President Trump, you just mentioned
No, but
Putin.
These are big things. I have to mention them.
Yeah, you just mentioned Putin, though, and this has been this controversy of the past week. Can you say yes or no whether you have talked to Vladimir Putin since you stopped being president?
Well, I don't comment on that, but I will tell you that if I did, it's a smart thing. If I'm friendly with people, if I have a relationship with people, that's a good thing, not a bad thing, in terms of a country. He's got 2,000 nuclear weapons, and so do we. China has a lot less, but they'll catch us within 5 years.
That sounds very much like you did talk to him.
I don't talk about that.
You talk about talking to Netanyahu, you talk about talking to these people.
Russia has never had a president that they respect so much, but more importantly, or less importantly, I guess, I went into Russia, and people said, oh, he likes Putin, and Putin likes him. Let me tell you, the first thing I did was terminated Nord Stream 2. Nobody ever heard of Nord Stream 2. It's a pipeline from Russia to Germany and all over Europe. I said, wait a minute, to NATO. I said, so let's get this straight. My first meeting, I said, so Putin's building the biggest pipeline in the world. He's going to Germany, but all over Europe. And you're paying him billions of dollars a year, billions of dollars a month. Germany's paying billions of dollars a month, and we're supposed to protect you against the guy that you're paying all this money to. So is there something wrong with my thinking? By the way, my biggest fan is Stoltenberg, just leaving, Secretary General of NATO. He said when Bush came in, he made a speech and left. When Obama came in, he made a speech and left. When Trump came in, he made a speech and he said, let me see your books. And I found out in the books that nobody was paying. There were only 7 countries that were paying. We were supporting NATO. They screw us on trade so bad, the European nations, them. In other words, it's not sustainable. You can't keep doing this. You can't have that, China, all of these countries. And stupid people made these deals. I saw trade deals that were so stupid that you'd have to be, that was so bad that you'd have to be an idiot to sign them. And we signed them for years. I could tell you trade deals that I have never seen anything. I said, who would agree to this? They had to be corrupt. They had to be corrupt. To make those deals, they had to be corrupt because there is no way a rational human being, I always say either corrupt or extremely stupid, because there's no way a rational human being would ever sign the trade deals that this country.
Can I ask you a particular thing about the dollar? You talked about wars. At the New York Economic Club, you said that if you lost the dollar as a reserve currency, it would be like America losing a war.
Yeah.
You look at what you're going to do in terms of protectionism, drive countries to use the other currencies, and all that debt is also going to lessen the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency? Do you worry about that?
The dollar is so secure. Your reserve currency is the strongest it'll ever be. And
you say that, President Trump, at the moment there is a thing called the Trump trade in the markets. Do you know what that is? The Trump trade is very simple. People are betting that your policies are going to drive up debt, they're going to drive up inflation, so they're going to drive up interest rates. Are the investors wrong?
Yeah, I had 4 years no inflation. I had 4 years no inflation.
But that was when you had much.
I had 4 years. It's better than that.
President Trump, the issue at the moment, the markets are looking at the fact you are making all these promises. Latest one was car loans. You're flooding the thing with giving giveaways.
But we're
I was actually quite kind to you. I used 7 trillion. The upper estimate is 15 trillion. People like the Wall Street Journal, who's hardly a communist organization,
yeah, but you don't know.
They have criticized you on this as well. You are running up enormous debt.
What does the Wall Street Journal know? I'm meeting with them tomorrow. What does the Wall Street Journal know? They've been wrong about everything. So have you, by the way. You've been wrong about
You're trying to turn this. You're trying to turn this.
You've been wrong.
No, you're trying to turn this into debate. There are business people. There are business
you're wrong.
people.
You've been wrong. You've been wrong all your life on this stuff. You've been wrong. Let me tell you about currency. You're going jumping a lot of different subjects.
Well, you're sticking to the subject very closely.
Let's stick to reserve currency. That's where you started, right? The reserve currency is under threat. Because you have Iran, you have Russia, you have China. China's the one that you have to worry about because they want it.
Yeah.
They want to have the yuan be the thing of power. So here's what I'm doing. Again, I hate to go back to it. If somebody says, and I know countries want to get out because they don't respect our leadership. They look at this guy, they say, you got to be kidding. And she's worse than him. By the way, I never thought I'd say this. She is not as smart as Biden, if you can believe. This is not what we had 4 years of this lunacy, and we can't have it anymore. We're not going to have a country left. Okay, currency, very important.
Yes.
And if you want to go to third world status, lose your reserve currency. We have to have that. We cannot lose it. If you'll go to third world status in this country because you take a look at the way things are running. If a country tells me, sir, we like you very much, but we're going to no longer adhere to being in the reserve currency. We're not going to salute the dollar anymore. I'll say, that's okay. And you're going to pay a 100% tariff on everything you sell into the United States. And we love your product. I hope you sell a lot of it into the United States, but you're going to pay 100% tariff. He will then follow it up by saying, sir, it would be an honor to stay with the reserve currency. That will be like just playing. That's not even chess, that's checkers. But you don't have listen to this. You don't have other people that can talk that way. A lot of people say, we love Trump's policy, but we would like to have another messenger because we don't like him. He's a little bit crass. And then, actually, it was Lindsey Graham, I must say. He was a progressive, in all fairness. But Lindsey Graham said, but Trump's policy doesn't work without Trump. And there's a lot of truth to that.
Let me ask you a very factual question. The Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
You say you don't want interest rates to go higher. You've gone backwards and forwards about whether you want to keep Jerome Powell as chair of the Federal Reserve. His term as chair runs on to May 2026. Would you seek to remove or demote him?
Look, I think it's the greatest job in government. You show up to the office once a month and you say, let's see, flip a coin. And everybody talks about you like you're a god. Oh, what will he do? I mean, before, the guy used to walk into my office, he was like begging. He was fine.
But you did talk you talked about removing him once.
I did because he was keeping the rates too high.
Yeah.
And I was right.
And you would do that again?
In fact, he actually dropped them too much when I did this. Because I said I was threatening to terminate him. There was a question as to whether or not you could. And there was an article in the New York Times, 2 half pages. 1 page said I can do it by lawyers. 1 half page said I couldn't. And that was enough for him. And he dropped the hell out of the rates. He dropped them too much. Here's the story. I think that if you're a very good president with good sense, you should be able to at least talk to them. I don't say make the decision at all, but I've been a very successful businessman. I've done really good, much better. Now people are understanding how good I've done because they're seeing it. Much better than the fake news wants to give me credit for.
Just on the issue of whether you would replace
I think I have the right to say, as a very good businessman and somebody that's used a lot of sense, I think I have the right to say that, I think I'm better than he would be. I think I'm better than most people would be in that position. I think I have the right to say I think you should go up or down a little bit. I don't think I should be allowed to order it, but I think I have the right to put in comments as to whether or not interest rates should go up or down.
Maybe we can change the subject to technology, seeing you wouldn't answer about the Federal Reserve. The US Justice Department is thinking about breaking up Alphabet, as Google likes to be known now. Should Google be broken up?
I just haven't gotten over something the Justice Department did yesterday, where Virginia cleaned up its voter rolls and got rid of thousands and thousands of bad votes, and the Justice Department sued them that they should be allowed to put those bad votes and illegal votes back in and let the people vote. So I haven't gotten over that. A lot of people have seen that. They can't even believe it.
The question is about Google, President Trump.
Yeah, look, Google's got a lot of power. They're very bad to me, very, very bad to me. I mean, I can speak from that standpoint. They only have bad stories. In other words, if I have 20 good stories and 20 bad stories, and everyone's entitled to that, you'll only see the 20 bad stories. And I called the head of Google the other day, and I said, I'm getting a lot of good stories lately, but you don't find them in Google. I think it's a whole rigged deal. I think Google's rigged just like our government is rigged all over the place.
You would break them up, in other words?
I'd do something, but you have to have, look, I give them a lot of credit. They've become such a power, and you got to give them credit for that. How they became a power is, really the discussion. At the same time, it's a very dangerous thing because we want to have great companies. We don't want China to have these companies. Right now, China is afraid of Google. Right now, China is a very powerful, very smart group of people. I will tell you that from very personal experience.
There's an example of a Chinese tech company at the moment, TikTok.
Yeah.
You initially wanted to ban TikTok. Now you like it, apparently, for some reason to do with Facebook.
Yeah.
There is a decision coming up, if you became president, its Chinese parent would have to sell it, I think it's by January the 19th. Would you force them to do that? So
I originally had it all done, and then I said to Congress, your decision. I said, I'm not going to, pull any strings, nothing. Your decision. You make it. But I had it all done, and I said, you make it. And they decided not to make it. I didn't care if they made it or not, because to me it was a flip of a coin. You have some real First Amendment problems. You have a lot of problems.
You just talked about Chinese technology, the need to defend against it.
Yeah.
TikTok and the threat people see to many kind of American children and things like that.
Yeah, but
why do you no longer see TikTok as a security threat?
I think it is a threat. Frankly, I think everything's a threat. There's nothing that's not a threat. But sometimes you have to fight through these threats. You can't just, like Google. I'm not a fan of Google. They treat me badly. But are you going to destroy the company by doing that? If you do that, are you going to destroy the company? What you can do without breaking it up is make sure that it's more fair. They do treat me very badly. Oh, and he told me, no way. You're the #1 person on all of Google for stories. I mean, which probably makes sense, to be honest with you. I actually believe most of them are bad stories, but these are minor details, right? And it's only bad because of the fake news, because the news is really fake. That's the one we really have to straighten out. We have to straighten out our press, because we have a corrupt press. That's the one we really.
Can I ask you about Silicon? I was in Silicon Valley recently. You talked to the tech bosses there and the tech people, and there seems to be a real fear that what you would do with tech is you would hand it over to Elon Musk and say, you sort it out.
No, I have great respect for Elon. Look, I saw that rocket ship come in yesterday and go right back to where it took off, to the gantry, I guess they call it. And I said, what the hell? I was on a phone talking about probably politics, and the television's on, and I'm seeing this big thing where the white paint was burned off it from the thousands of miles an hour, the heat. And I see this big, massive tube that's 10 stories, 20 stories tall come down. I told the person on the phone, wait a minute, I'm seeing something I don't believe it. Neither does anybody else here. And I said, wait a minute. I forgot the guy was on the phone. He waited for a half hour. And I watched that come down. And I watched it come down and come right in between those big levers. And I said, and it looked to me like I was going to crash. It was coming in hot. And all of a sudden, boom, you see the motor, the fire kick in. And I called Elon. I said, that's the most incredible thing. I said, can Russia do that? Nope. I said, can the United States do it? Nope. He's the only one that can do it. And I said,
you now want to put him in charge of deregulation.
Not deregulation, cutting.
Cutting wasteful spending.
Yeah, cutting.
Every single president,
which would include
including
deregulation.
Every president comes in and talks about cutting wasteful spending.
Oh, there's tremendous waste.
Give me an example of something you will do that will get rid of government spending.
Well, let me give you an example. When I came into government, I was the first thing.
An example going forward.
Well,
not what you did in the past.
This is going forward because it's the same thing. When I first sat down, a general came into my office and he said, sir, it's nice to meet you. Would you please sign this? I said, what is it? It's a contract for a new Air Force One, which is actually 2 planes, not one, 2 Boeing 747. And I said, how much is it? $5.7 billion. It's a hell of an expensive plane, but there's reasons for that. And he said, nope, I'm not signing it. I said, who negotiated it? Barack Hussein Obama. I said, I'm not signing it. Why? Because there's a lot of fat. I said, I'm not signing. I got it down to, because first week they cut off $400 million for $1.7 billion less. If you look at every contract, that's one contract and relatively small compared to most. Think of it. You save $1.7 billion because you negotiate. Every deal is like that. We're building ships that are costing 2-3 times more.
Can you give me an example of something?
There's tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse in our country. And if you could cut it, you would have a surplus without even going into growth. But growth, we will grow. We're going to bring companies and jobs in at levels that you've never seen. And you would never be able to do it because you're not a believer in tariffs.
I'm not running for president.
Let me tell you, the only way you can do it is through the threat of tariffs. It's the only way you can do it.
Can we, maybe I can ask you then about something else. Yeah. Business people here in this room, business people, capital markets, they all like the rule of law. They like certainty. The Chinese, who you mentioned, other dictators,
right?
They don't like it when things go wrong. They like it when things go wrong in America. If you look at the events of January the 6th, 2021, it showed to many people America's democracy was unruly and violent. Only 3 weeks to go to the election. Will you commit now to respecting and encouraging a peaceful transfer of power?
Well, you had a peaceful transfer of power.
You had a peaceful transfer of power. You had a peaceful. Come on, President Trump. You had a peaceful transfer of power compared with Venezuela, but it was by far the worst transfer of power for a long time.
Thank you. I appreciate that because this is what they like to do. This is what they like to do.
The question, President Trump, is would you respect the decision?
When I found out about this interview, I did a little check. He's a man that has not been a big Trump fan over the years. So I had a choice. Do I do this interview or not? I'm glad I did it. But do I do this interview or do I disappoint a lot of people? Because I know a lot of people in the audience. But his view is very different than mine. Let me just tell you.
I'm asking you a question, Trustro.
We had a term, peacefully and patriotically. These were people. If you think an election is crooked, and I do, 100%, if you think the day it comes when you can't protest, you take a look at the Democrats. They protested 2016. They're still protesting it. Nobody talks about them. But if we protest, we want to have honest elections. You think the last election was honest?
All the times it went to courts, the courts sided with the other.
They went to court, and the courts all said, you don't have standing. Nobody had standing. And it's hard, frankly, after an election for a judge, but they all said you don't. Nobody ever had standing. But the facts, if you take a look, I'd show you hundreds of pages of facts. People were angry. People went there. And I'll tell you what, they never show that. The primary scene in Washington was hundreds of thousands, the largest group of people I've ever spoken before, and I've spoken before. And it was love and peace. And some people went to the Capitol, and a lot of strange things happened there. A lot of strange things with people being waved into the Capitol by police, with people screaming, go in, with that never got into trouble. You know, I don't want to mention names, but you know who they are. A lot of strange things happened. But you had a peaceful, very peaceful. I left the morning that I was supposed to leave. I went to Florida, and you had a very peaceful transfer. This was not and I'll tell you what, those people that did go down, which was a tiny fraction of the people that went to Washington. I mean, you're talking about a very, very small, because hundreds of thousands of people, and I don't know what you had, 500, 600, 700 people go down to the Capitol. But those people, that was not one of those people had a gun. Nobody was killed except for Ashley Babbitt. She was killed. She was shot in the head by a policeman what he did was horrible.
President Trump, maybe
So I think we should be allowed to disagree on that. And obviously, you see by the reaction in this room,
let's return to one other big subject that you bring up repeatedly, immigration.
Yeah.
I know it's a very emotive issue for you, but just from the point of view of business people here, you look at the full effect of taking a lot of people out of the workforce, removing a lot of people. The Congressional Budget Office is banking on the fact that there'll be $9 trillion added to the GDP of America over the next 10 years by immigrants. You want to stop that process. For all the people who run businesses in the audience, I'm just focusing on the economic thing. Are you prepared to say, look, it's fine to have a slightly smaller economy in exchange for having the immigration controls you want?
Simple answer. I want a lot of people to come into our country, but I want them to come in legally. I don't want to have... Look, this is a party, the Republican Party, of common sense. Forget about conservative, liberal. Let's say conservative, but we're really a party of, we need borders, we need fair elections, we don't want men playing in women's sports, we don't want transgender operations without parental consent. You know, there's so many things, but it's 99.9% is common sense. It really is common sense. And I like to say it, I don't know if anyone said it in the past, but I say we're really a party of common sense, and we want to have great people in our country. I want to have a lot of people come in so that you have your choice and so that they have choice. I want to, I have a good heart. I have a heart where I want people to be taken care of, but I don't want to take in people where millions of people, 21 million people at least, have come in the last 3.5 years, unvetted, unchecked. We don't know anything about them. How about this? Gavin Newsom, he's the governor of California.
Newsom.
He signed Newsom, I call him.
Yeah. But do you think...
No, he corrected me. He corrected me. I said, that's the first time I've been corrected.
There are CEOs out here, if they said those sort of things about a rival CEO, they'd be sacked. Do you think it's fine for a president?
But they don't have to survive like me. They don't have to go through what I have to go through. There's never been a president that's been treated like me, so I have to fight my own way.
Well, you made a very good job of...
He signed a bill in California 2 days ago that you don't even have the right to ask a person for voter ID. And if you ask a person for voter ID, of course you have to show voter ID. The only reason you wouldn't do, because they want to cheat. The bill says you cannot, it's against the law for you to ask a person, may I please see your voter ID when he votes? What is our country coming to?
Well, you've given us a tour d'horizon of where that country might be going to. Thank you very much, President Trump.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the conversation.